Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for having me here. So I'll talk to you today, starting with one of the most cliched topics to have covered TED Talks, passion. Because I think I'd get this word out of the way as quickly as possible so I could get to the real issue why I'm here. Now, what is my passion? Before I get into that, I'll talk about myself. I'm a second-generation entrepreneur whose passion is to avoid boredom at all costs. And to avoid that boredom, I happen to be in business, because I simply put business as the art of being busy, busyness. So while dabbling and trying to work out different kinds of verticals of business, in 2016, I chanced upon a great new thing, water. Water, yes, bland, tasteless, colorless, mundane, fluid water. Water is part of our everyday lives, and it really doesn't, it's something we take for granted every day. So let me paint a small picture for you. Think of a situation. You're at a coffee shop, and you spill some coffee. To cover that coffee, you try and grab some napkins. Do you pick one, or do you just grab a fistful? Well, most of you, like me, would just grab a fistful. And the reason we'd grab a fistful is because it's free, isn't it? And the reason we do that is although the owner of the restaurant or the management has paid for those napkins and built the cost into the price of whatever you're paying for, but we waste it nonetheless. You're probably thinking, I started talking about water and now I'm talking about napkins. That's because napkins is a metaphor for water. When something is free or considered free, we just take it for granted. We take it for granted like it's going to be free forever and available. So before I talk more about water, we all started this day, got up in the morning, went about our general exercises. Do most of us know how much water we use per single daily task that we go about? Brushing your teeth can take up to 2 liters of water. Taking a 5-minute shower is 80 liters of water. Just a simple toilet flush is 9 liters of water literally down the drain. Half a cup of liter for coffee, 1 liter to just wash your hands. And it doesn't stop there. 150 liters for a daily washing machine load. 30 liters if you use a dishwasher, or 10 liters if you're hand washing your dishes. Simply put, that's the visible use of water that we see. But we call this invisible water virtual water, a term coined by water guru Professor Tony Allen. The concept of virtual water helps us realize how much water is needed to produce the goods we use and the food we eat. Yeah, you probably think that's a typo. You eat 3,496 liters of water every day. And people consider I'm from Bengal, so I'd say jol khabo. So eating would be there. But no, this technique is to put into perspective that ami jol khabo is because we really don't know how much water is used to get into the processing of whatever food we consume daily. It takes 200 liters of water in processing one single egg, 500 liters of water to get 1 pound of wheat, 650 liters to get half a kilo of bread, and doesn't stop there. So the question that arises is the global water crisis real? Is it really a problem? We've heard about water being an abundant source. 70% of the earth is water. But before we go into that, we'll talk about some more facts. 1 in 8 people worldwide don't have access to safe water. 8 million people are killed by water sanitation and hygiene-related issues annually. Every 90 seconds, a child dies because of waterborne and water-related diseases. In the last 50 years, the need for water and the demand for water has gone up by 300%. 1/5 of the world's population, that's 1.2 billion with a B, does not have access to safe drinking water and is in water stress areas. But that's the global situation. Let's bring this issue closer home. So we talk about one nation, one election, but we really don't have one glass of water to give out in cities. Even India today, 54% of India faces high to extremely high water stress. If you look at the areas which are in dark red and maroon are highly water stressed, and as you go down, it's lower water stress. In 2020, as we speak, 22.1% of our population still has to travel up to half a kilometer to get clean water. 14.9% has to travel within half a kilometer to get drinking water. And only 35% of our population has water available on their premises. Isn't that quite a shocking number? The question that arises is, what do we do about such a situation? Over the last few years, we've heard Cape Town being a big primary example of running out of water, where the government came out and said, in the next 20 days, if we don't get rain, you will have to queue up in the center of the city to get daily 3 liters of water. Chennai was the case last summer, where offices were shut, people didn't have water in their offices, so corporations had to shut down offices because there wasn't water available to them. So then the question is, are we wasting water? Are we conserving water? And how do we keep surviving for the next generations and the generation to come? Access to clean drinking water really shouldn't be a privilege. It needs to be a right to all. So that's where we come in. 97% of the world's 70% of water is non-drinkable because it's salt water. It's in the oceans, in the seas, and requires a lot of processing. And only 3% of the water is fresh water, which is in rivers, in polar ice caps, and so on and so forth. Now, the frozen water is something we really can't access. So if you think about where is the next source of water going to come from, it's a big question to ask. However, there is an answer. The answer is there's actually 37.5 trillion gallons of water in the air. As we speak right now, this room has air, and that carries a certain amount of water vapor and humidity. And that is what we do. Our company works towards making atmospheric water generators, which make simply water from air. It sounds something from a sci-fi movie or something that's not imaginable, or even if it is it scalable? Can it get to the level of solving water issues? Well, yes, it does. And I'll give you primary examples of how we do it. Before I do that, I'd like to tell you how it actually works. Most of you here have air conditioners at home, and you have a drain pipe behind the air conditioner which leaks water daily. What is that? That is condensate from a refrigeration cycle. So how does an AC work? We take the air, we pass it through cooling coils, and we push it into this room. And that air which hits the cooling coil generates some level of condensate. Think of that process in completely reverse. We built machines that take the fresh ambient air and immediately hit it on cooling coils. Just like on any summer day, if you put a cold glass of water out on a table, within a matter of seconds, you'll see that there's condensation on the outside of the glass. It's not that the glass is leaking. There's water from the air that is condensed from that glass. Similarly, we have cooling coils where the fresh air hits, the water condenses from the air, and then we collect that water, pass it through various stages of filtration, including adding minerals to it to ensure that we get the right vital minerals that we need, and then we make it drinkable. So the question is, right, so you make water from air, you make machines that make water from humidity. Can we do this everywhere? No, we can't do this everywhere. We do really need the real raw material, which is humid ambient air at certain temperatures. So yes, we do have a geographical limitation to where we do it. But wherever it's possible physically, we must try and pitch this product as much as possible. Because this is the solution to future of drinking water. Although it seems like an expensive cost of water today, it's something that we can rely on for the future. We've had primary examples of how we solve the solution. So this is what a general machine looks like. If you see the smaller ones, they're a 100 liter per day machine. And the bigger machines that you see can do up to 5,000 liters of water per day from air. So a big case study, which is very close to my heart, and I think that is probably our biggest success story so far, is there's a village in Damoh district in Madhya Pradesh called Hardua Mangad. Since independence, that village has not had access to running water. They have one well in the middle of the village where people go and fetch water from daily. But unfortunately, rain isn't always kind, and it doesn't always rain for the water well to fill up. So every year during the summer, people actually dive into the wells as deep as 40 feet to get as much as 1 glass of drinking water. And that results in fatalities. At least 2 to 3 people have been dying year on year from trying to jump into those wells. Well, now, thanks to this technology, they don't have to do that. We have a 1,000-liter air-to-water machine installed in that village, which gives them a perpetual source of drinking water at least. So now people don't have to dive into wells to get water. Another great story that we have in terms of technology implementation is this is a concept from the country of Qatar in Doha. As you know, that the country is really gearing up for the World Cup 2022. So they're trying to build up sustainable technologies as much as possible. While doing that, they chanced upon a design, the one that you see. These are completely self-sustained solar air-conditioned bus station canopies. So when people can walk under them, the blower comes on, it cools the people while they're waiting for a bus, and it provides them shade. So it's completely sustainable, and as you can see, that it has these planters on top to naturally shade the people standing under for 2 reasons. A, it's green, so they don't end up using any kind of plastic or fiber material to create that shade. And B, yes, plants are amazing. During the day, they get oxygen, and they're really, really good at naturally insulating. We developed special machines to irrigate those plants. Those machines are in those canopies to irrigate these planters, which are self-sufficient standalone canopies that are providing shade to people. This is an actual photo of the Execute project. The plants still haven't grown yet because it's the winter. So the question that we really have today in front of us is water really free? Should it be free, or should it become a commodity? There was a time when fossil fuel was considered absolutely free and abundant. And now we're at a stage where we've tried to figure out alternate technologies to fossil fuel. Similarly, groundwater isn't always going to be abundant. Desalination isn't a long-term solution because it has a huge environmental impact and obviously requires the ocean close by. If you see in the Middle East, desalination is a huge source of water, but it's having a huge environmental impact today. The wastewater that is generated from desalination is pumped back into the ocean, and that creates a very high level of salinity. So much so that it started impacting the local ocean life and spoiling the entire ecological cycle. Thanks to the money they have, they're literally considering towing an iceberg in so they can add fresh water to the ocean. But all of us don't have that kind of opportunity. So, yes, can we solve the water crisis by becoming independent, transmission-free? Can we move towards creating our own water from air and adding a new source of water to the list of various kinds of waters we do? I think if there's one thing that you must take from this talk today, it's, should I really grab that fistful of napkins? And is water really free? Thank you very much.